Greetings. Today I'm going to talk about the Gear4Music 529 Pro fan fret 8-string. So this is my first 8-string guitar and I've actually owned it for a couple of months now, although I have played 6-string guitars and 5-string bass for quite a few years. And I also work as a repair technician, so I've handled quite a lot of different guitars and instruments in my time. And as it happens, just through my job, I also sometimes take massive deliveries of Gear4Music instruments and their own made stuff. Sometimes that's to inspect, dozens and dozens of their instruments in a single delivery. So I'd say I've got a pretty good idea, maybe more than most people, of what to kind of expect from Gear4Music's quality control. I have an alias called Luo, where I sometimes make kind of heavy experimental electronic music and incorporate kind of low-tuned guitars and things like that. This is why I've wanted to experiment with an 8-string for myself. Typically speaking, 8 strings tend to be pretty expensive, and yeah, seeing as I've never really played an 8-string before, wasn't really sure if I could justify forking out such a substantial amount of cash on something that I just wanted to kind of like mess around with and experiment with a little bit. And yeah, recently I was playing one of Gear4Music's own made 6-string Telecasters, which is from their Knoxville range. Yeah, I was just quite blown away at the quality of their kind of more budget guitars, and then I noticed that they also offer 8 strings, so I thought, based on what their 6 strings are like, I thought I'd take a risk on one of these and see what it turned out like. Yeah, I've actually been quite pleasantly surprised with this thing, although there are also some things about it that I didn't really expect that other people considering buying one might want to consider about it. Oh, by the way, yeah, extra little mini side review. Some people might have possibly noticed that Gear4Music offer an even cheaper 8-string model than the 529 Pro in their Harlem range, and I would not recommend getting one of these. I actually got one of those first, but it was like not a very nicely made guitar. There was sharp fretwork and the output jack was kind of hideously noisy, and I think there might have been some sort of grounding issue, or there was not proper shielding for the pickup. So that is why I returned the Harlem that I bought and upgraded to this one. So I'll get into the kind of the build quality and the specs of this thing, and kind of the good things and the bad things before I start doing a sound demo with it. So overall, this thing's actually pretty simple and straightforward, which you probably might expect on a budget guitar. So the body's made of mahogany, and it's actually surprisingly a pretty light guitar. It's actually lighter than all of my 6 strings, and yeah, it actually feels like quite relatively well balanced, and it just kind of comes to sit and rest in a relatively easy natural position. I don't have to like hold it up too much. The neck is apparently 5-piece maple and artificial rosewood in there, and the fretboard is laurel, and there's also 2 truss rods going through that. Yeah, so the neck is actually my favourite thing about this guitar, to be honest. It feels really, really nice. It's unfinished, so it's just kind of the wood, which is good for me because I'm quite a clammy-handed freak that gets really sweaty when I'm playing guitars. And also it kind of looks like it's got racing stripes on the back, which make you play faster, which is cool. Oh yeah, the neck also has like a kind of interesting shape, so it might not really appear on camera, but it's like it's slightly flatter in the middle, and then it kind of like rolls off as it gets towards the top and bottom edges of the neck. But yeah, it feels easy enough to kind of access all the notes and reach all the notes on this thing, even though I would say I don't really feel like I've got particularly huge hands or like Toast in the Bassie's salad fingers. Then the tuners up here, they actually feel quite pretty like nice and solid when you're tuning up. They feel like they kind of lock into place and feel quite sturdy. So for the fretwork, this is actually, again, surprisingly decent on a budget guitar, especially because it's got the fan fret thing going on, and there are quite a few of them. Actually feels pretty good. There's no like sharp edges, feels smooth. As for the controls, these are pretty simple. You just got a volume and a tone knob and a 3-way pickup selector, so it's actually pretty straightforward. There's not really much else to say there. Pickups are all right. They don't sound absolutely amazing because they do leave a little bit to be desired, but in combination with an amp sim, then you can more or less work around what these pickups lack, and you can just kind of boost settings in the plugin to kind of get what you want out of them. And then the other thing that I've noticed on this guitar is that the volume knob is a little bit kind of slidey, and what I mean by that is I'm not sure if it's moving either by itself or I'm accidentally kind of knocking it a little bit when I'm playing, but it seems to quite easily just roll itself down in volume a little bit. It might just need a little bit of tightening on the inside so it's not loose, basically. But yeah, that is one thing that I've noticed on this particular guitar. As for the finish or the colour, so this is grey tide. There's 2 colour options available, and this was basically the one that I hated the least, so it looks kind of cool, I guess. I actually prefer the back of this guitar though. I really, really like this just sort of kind of unfinished wood looking look. Something else pretty important, this thing has got a reversed headstock, which is pretty cool. But also I bought a set of regular only bought 8-string strings to put on this. Basically, the string, especially the lower bass strings, they were only just about long enough to actually reach up to this tuning peg here. Ah, bollocks. I haven't clipped this string at all, and I've only got about like one slight wind on there to get it up to pitch. And so when you start loosening the string down, you're just not going to have that much tension on the peg, which isn't great for kind of tuning stability. It does just about go on, but yeah, I didn't discover this until I came to restring this thing. I also bought another set of strings by Roto Sound, which are their 8-string standard set, and those just had a slight little bit of extra length to get around the post, and just to give these low 2 bass strings just a little bit of purchase on the tuning pegs. Fortunately, it possibly means that I'm going to have to look into getting maybe a custom set of strings for the low ones, or maybe investing in a slightly more expensive set of strings, which I think typically come with a little bit more string length on the end. That was kind of a sneaky thing that I didn't spot when I bought this, and yeah, it's kind of slightly annoying about it, I guess, and some people might not like that about it, so I thought it was definitely worth kind of mentioning that. The action's actually really comfortable. I did have to lower it a little bit out of the box, but that's really easy to do. Yeah, it feels very light and easy to play, doesn't require much pressure. Intonation wise, this wasn't bad out of the box, but it probably needs adjusting, which you'll hear in a minute. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can really think of to say about the specs of this thing, so I'm going to move on to a sounds and tones demo. Other information about this, I'm just going directly out of the guitar into my Universal Audio Apollo interface, and then just directly into amps and plugins. So that's a little bit of what this guitar sounds like on its own, but I often feel like guitar demos like this can be a little bit unflattering to the guitar, specifically when it's in isolation with nothing else around it. And I think it's important to reference how this guitar would actually sound recorded in a piece of music with other stuff going on. So I've recently been producing a kind of melodic metal project for a good friend of mine called Alex Pedrassa, who also has another project called Voronoi, or Voronoi. This is a new project of his that he's been writing solo, and he sent me a bunch of his riffs. So yeah, for full disclosure, I didn't actually write this music or these riffs. I'm just producing it for Alex and beefing up his demo project by recording in real guitars and 5-string bass, sequencing higher quality MIDI drum tracks, and giving an overall mix and a rough master to this track just to kind of make it sound a little bit more like a finished thing than a demo idea. So I'll give you a little play of a couple of these right now. So for me, that's actually quite impressive, and I'm pretty happy with what I've actually managed to get out of this budget guitar. But of course, in a recording context, it's possible for me to do things like quad tracking and further editing to get a more professional sound out of this guitar, and it makes it sound more impressive, right? So of course, that's not really going to be possible at a gig. So how does this perform as an unedited live instrument? Well, I've also got some footage of that too. I recently put out a whole live set on my channel where I'm using this guitar in that context, so if you're curious about that, you can find it in this video from the card that I'll chuck in the top right here, I think it will be. So to summarise and to conclude, I am actually pretty impressed with this thing, and it definitely feels like an instrument that costs more and would be a higher quality thing than what it retails for, I have to say. You know, whilst the pickups maybe aren't the most like expressive or articulate, particularly on the kind of the clean tones, I think they leave a little bit to be desired. I'm finding that I'm able to get what I need from them, and I think it's holding up quite well in a recording context, which is mainly all I really need it for, I think, so that's cool. To be honest, I'm still going to be using my 6-string guitars for parts that don't require the range that this 8-string offers, because tonally they do still just sound a little bit better than this guitar would be if I was using it as a 6-string, if that makes sense. So there's not much point in me using this for parts that I would just play my 6s on, because it will still sound better than using this, have to be honest. But I am glad to have this in my arsenal of axes for when I need to get down to these lower ranges. I would definitely recommend this to anyone who is thinking of exploring the 8-string guitar on a smaller budget, and I hope this has been a fun insight for anybody curious about one of these things. I'm going to wrap this video up here for today. If you've enjoyed the music, then I'd say consider checking out some of my other videos or my alias Luo and our music on Spotify, Bandcamp and all the rest of it, and we've got live videos and performance stuff out. And if any of the info in this video has been useful for you today, then consider popping a like and subscribe, as that would be really appreciated. But yeah, for now that's all today, and I'll hopefully catch you in my next upload whenever that may be. But until then, take it easy.